So this is chapter 6 of how to do the work, and on beliefs, and such an important topic, something that I use in my work every day with parents. And I'm just going to do this super abbreviated, not quite like Joe because she's so good at this, just highlights. And um, one of the phrases I liked are beliefs are practiced thoughts, reinforced, not necessarily true. One of the important concepts that she talked about was confirmation bias, that our brains have so much stimulus coming at us. There's no possible way without some filters and some lenses to make sense of it all. We could function. And so we get these lenses and these filters. I like them, think of them like glasses. Like, which pair of glasses am I wearing today? Is it this one, or is it my efficiency one, which I so got from my parents? Um, or is it the being practical ones that I got from my dad? Is it the you have to be competent all the time or else you won't be loved? You know, so that was one of the homeworks, is what are the lenses? Um, and the confirmation bias, it helps us prioritize, and it especially looks towards threatening things because that is the survival mechanism kicking in. And so it has sort of a negative slant, which is also a little problematic for us. And She uses the example of it primes our filter so that when, for example, we're looking for a new car, we see that new car everywhere all of a sudden, when a day before we didn't, because we just didn't have that as our prioritization lens. And that we get these lenses from our childhood, from our culture, from our spiritual beliefs, from these key parts of our lives, and they help us sort of keep the filters of what matters and what is going to help keep us alive. And the things that keep us alive are the ones that um, give us approval face. Like from our parents, you're like, oh, good job, yay, and we try to not do those ones. We learn very quickly what's the disapproval face and what's going to get us a smack or a timeout or a whatever it is. And so our caregivers have a lot of influence on us. Um, I think that's kind of the biggest ones I got. And then I loved the homework. I'll just by way of entrance and vulnerability, share some of mine. Some of the messages, some of the filters I got. One of the ones that's funny, not funny, is I think Petra even talked about this, was thou shalt use resources wisely and be efficient in all things. Those are kind of two different ones, but thou shalt not waste water, electricity, plastic bags. I got so much approval face when I did that. And I got, whoa, don't, shame when I made a mistake in that area. Um, Efficiency. My parents at 86 still gather the water from their cold shower and carry it out to the garden to water plants because sometimes California has a drought. Um, anyway, so it just shows how, again, these aren't bad things. It's not good bad lens. It's that what drives your life. And when it becomes compulsive for me, that's when I know I've tipped too far and I'm in that rigid. It's like my life depends on it. It's approval, disapproval, it's attachment, it's am I loved, do I belong, versus, oh, I choose this, I'm conscious of this, I'm in my awareness. So I think that's what she wants us to be attuning to. And the big hopeful story that I got was the empowerment that I can change my thoughts, beliefs. I can notice them and I can say, is this still serving me? And then I can practice reframing when it doesn't still serve me. So if I'm, sick and I don't want to carry the water from my cold water to the garden, I can blow that off. It's okay. My parents aren't in the room and they're not going to be, they're still going to love me. So it's just reprogramming that worthiness message, because so much of this for me was about my worthiness. And from culture and religion, I got thou shalt be good all the time, even if I'm not feeling like you cannot make a mistake. That was a big one I got from teachers. You will get A's in all things. And so it's just too rigid, it's too intense. And I want to be more in choice, more conscious. When sometimes I can just be lazy and blow something off. That's okay too. Sometimes that's the best choice I can make. And just, yeah, the thing that the way she taught to interrupt and to witness it was to meet that, whatever the old pattern is, pay attention if it is an old pattern, and then spend less and less time of your attention spinning out, ruminating on it. And if you can get to this point, your invitation is to reframe it into a more life-serving thought and belief with a mantra, affirmation, just your attention. So, who else wants to talk about how this chapter lived in them this week, and maybe what they got from their culture or their family of origin, some of their really strong beliefs?
This is Jerry. I'm going to log off and see if I can get in with my computer. Otherwise, I'll come back in with my phone just to let you know.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Bethany, you're first on my list, but you don't have to be first to go. So
I can go. I am not prepared per se. It's been a week here too with a ton of stuff going on, but I was reading up about this tuning into your intuition and this idea that was not taught to me as a kid, that what I think and feel matters. I was more conditioned to tune into someone else's feelings and thinking and please them and keep them from causing harm or hating or doing harm to me. It was, to be honest and vulnerable meant death, kind of, or felt like it, because we had a baby in my family who died at 9 months old. And my sister's story, she was older. I came after this baby. But my sister's story was this baby died from neglect. And my impression from this life altering event in our family was that I had to be a certain way in order to live. It's heartbreaking to notice that this informed me all my life. It caused me to live in a great deal of fear and try to manage instead of live. So I like this process I've been in for decades, which is to come into how I genuinely feel about things and what's happening today instead of the family story and the events in the family that affected all of us. I'm not, even though I was born after, I was only born April, May, June, July, 4 months after the baby died. We would have been 10 months apart to 15 months apart. So anyway, this part that someone gave their piece about it. They said, be present and acknowledge, and don't be passive about things that impact your lives, and to spend time. So I've been spending time writing and really paying attention to how I feel. So what I understand about this for me is this is a lifetime. It's not a one and done. It's just paying attention to suddenness. What happens is suddenly something happens. Like recently, someone hurt my feelings in a really big way, to the point where I was crying for hours. And it's taken me weeks to really break it down and become capable of acknowledging my part, to be okay with taking care of myself and not having this person be any kind of integral part of my life anymore. Just how I want to go forward from here in this. I, having been conditioned the way I was, events like that I don't immediately process. I have to go through this. I'm going to get teary, but I have to go through this, giving myself permission to feel it deeply and sadly, because that's not how you survived in my family. You don't feel things, you do things. You get past things, you make things happen, you become, instead of, going into the sadness and the disappointment and then being really okay with. I was always very, very much poo-pooed the idea of your inner child. Like, we weren't allowed to be children. One of the things that was expected of us as humans in my family was children die, so you can't be a child. You always have to be really adult-like and figure out stuff, and you have to know. So we pretended we knew things that we didn't know, and we were very mature looking, but my maturity was really not there. It took me decades. I remember a friend of mine saying, we just need to grow that part of you up, Bethany, because you're coming at this like a child. And I am, there's so much here that I'm not making any sense. I apologize. But there is this keeping myself intuitive and able to be capable of being intuitive and tune in. It's just a habit that I haven't got, and it's a skill set I haven't got, and I'm still working on it. And this book has really helped me to understand how that works, and piece by piece make changes, keeping a journal, writing things down, speaking to, safe people about it, just the whole process. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Bethany, I just so resonate with each and every part of what you said. My mom's sister died at 9 months, and when she was 9 months, anyway, it affects generations because it absolutely stops the ability to feel and protect. So I just, you're not alone. And every step you've taken has brought you closer to this aliveness, this intuition. And it's hard. It's scary. So thanks for sharing. Who else would like to go next? It's a big chapter, and I know some are sick, some aren't feeling well, some don't have cameras on, so it's
Well, this is Jerry. I guess I'll go next.
right.
Okay. First of all, Bethany, I mean, everything you said resonated with me as well. And you make so much sense. Everything makes sense. Very logical, very sensible. So I just wanted you, from my perspective, to know what I'm hearing. So even though a lot of this is not new for me on an intellectual level, it's all becoming new for me on an emotional level. Because this is time now for me to process this, not to say, oh, I know that. No, it doesn't matter what I know. It's my ability to process it. And I took a few notes, and again, I need to hear myself saying this again, but one of the things she says is that understanding our parents, that they had a life outside of the one that we know. And, I knew that, but so what? It's as a child, all I knew was that I was being ignored. And I felt that there was something wrong with me, that I was unacceptable, that I was stupid, that I was really a damaged kid. And that I didn't matter. I went through life thinking that I didn't matter. And something that Nicole says is that this becomes a core belief, which is our deepest perception about our identity. And I mean, this is only one thing that I'm mentioning, but it has all become so synonymous with my identity. And she was saying that the more you learn about the childhood brain and how these core beliefs are formed, the better able we are to witness this and become aware of them and ultimately choose which one to keep and which one to leave behind. And you know, I didn't feel loved, and I didn't feel safe. So I wasn't able to like really get out there and just play and be myself, to be a child really at all. And I have a sense, I don't know, but that perhaps because of all of this, that I had some difficulty learning certain things. I mean, my grades were in some cases above average, in some cases average, but I always had the feeling that I had much more potential and capability, but I wasn't able to access that. If that makes any sense, I don't know. When she says the three basic needs, to be seen, to be heard, and to express our most authentic selves. Well, none of that. I experienced none of that. And it's very helpful for me to understand all of this. And I'm not, you know, regardless of how this sounds, I'm not, I mean, sometimes I feel compassion for my mother. Sometimes, because she didn't have an easy life. My father had I mean, his life was just really awful. His mother was totally neglectful. She used to leave and go upstate to a hotel and leave all the kids alone. And my father, being the oldest, but also very responsible, took care of them. So he never had a life of his own. And that was a choice that he made. Still, my mother, I don't really know about her life. I know her mother was always in bed sick. So I don't think that there was very much of a relationship. I don't think she felt. I met her father, and I say I can't even call him grandpa because I met him only once, and he seemed okay. But my sense is that he was always very gruff and very scary. And so I don't, you know, my mother, I'm sure she never felt safe or loved. And she didn't have any of that to give me. And the more I remind myself of this, the easier it's going to be for me to understand what happened to my brain, you know, as I developed. And so at one of the exercises was to list what an old belief is and what a new one is. And I'm just going to work with one that I have little value and that I'm not acceptable. My new belief is that I am worthy and I have value. And every time I think about all these negative things about me, I've been doing this to, you know, reverse it and just say, not deny that I was feeling that way, but say what I am worthy and I do have value. And, you know, all of this has really stood in my way because it's been so easy for me. If I'm with someone and I feel that it's so easy just for me to not feel that I'm acceptable with them, that I'm good enough. And it comes from childhood. So the more I practice all of this, the better it'll be. I know that I'm going to begin to feel better. And I do feel somewhat better, but I still carry this whole idea that I am unacceptable. And, but I'm working at it. And as I always say, I'm hopeful. So that's it, I
That
guess.
was beautifully said, Jerry. And boy, I can also resonate. And I hear you saying that even though you don't feel that way all the time, acceptable and lovable and mattering, that you can see your parents didn't get that from their parents nor their parents. So this multi-generational, it's not because they didn't love you or you didn't matter. It was because they didn't have the skills or this awareness or this capability, and that you're starting to really get that.
Yes.
And how empowering. I know for me, when I make meaning from that down, unworthy, not enough place, it's dark and terrible. And so it's both emotional and beliefs, and they go together.
But like
That was
just what
beautifully
you
said.
said, doing the work is very empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That was really poignant.
I think that awareness is really key. You know, she talks about buying a new car and you suddenly see your make, model and colour of car on the road because you're suddenly aware of it. And I think with this work that we're doing, this awareness, you suddenly start to see areas of your life that it was almost like you were blindsided to before. You know, it's a really weird thing. And it's great when the old blinkers start to go back and you think, oh, I didn't notice that before. I thought she always did that, but I didn't think you know, that shadow was obviously in me as well. So I just find it fascinating. Well done, Jerry and Bethany. One of the things that she talks about at the bottom of page 110, many of our core beliefs, unfortunately, are shaped by traumas. And as we know, traumas dig deep into our psyche. And then at the top of page 111, she says, once a core belief is formed, you engage what's called confirmation bias, which you talked about at the beginning, Alison. And then halfway down that page, she says, just like the nervous system's fight or flight response, this bias is built into our operating system at a physiological level and is largely out of our conscious control. And then in the next paragraph, she talks about the bundle of nerves located at the brain stem. Do you remember a few weeks ago, I sent that picture of the three parts of the brain and the main brain stem coming up from the, there you go. It's one I prepared earlier. Yeah, exactly. And she refers to it here, and it's an area of the brain that we don't have control over. It's one that just kicks in because it's our sort of animal instinct. So I thought it was interesting that even with our core beliefs, there's still elements that we can't control and that come from come from within us and within our bodies. So and then she talks about this new car idea of you suddenly start to notice things around you. As many of you know, my son married a Chinese girl in China last year, and I went over to China for the wedding, and then I went over to meet the baby. And now all of a sudden, when I drive around, I see Chinese things everywhere. So I didn't notice that Chinese restaurant was there. And then I see something online and it's Chinese, and I bump into somebody's new friend, and I'm suddenly thinking, oh, they look like they're Chinese. And so it's all of a sudden, it's like all these things were going on around me before, but I just wasn't maybe aware. And now, there's an element of life that's sort of opening up to me. So I thought that was interesting. The other one, just I'll quickly touch on, I know there's lots of us, so I'll be short and sweet, was a core belief is formed when you engage what's called, oh, I think I did that bit. Oh yeah, I wanted to go on to say that if your belief is discarded or ignored in favour of information, if you believe you're unworthy, if you'll see a job promotion or something that's happened by mistake, knowing it's only a matter of time before you get discovered to be an imposter, you really are. And that imposter syndrome is very, very common in all of us. And it all stems from this unworthiness from childhood that we've gone through. And the whole childhood development process, I just find absolutely fascinating. So anyway, that's me. And my homework was all about timekeeping. My childhood was do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. And I've always worn a watch. And it's only in the last couple of years I've stopped wearing a watch. And now I live with a 95-year-old who's got Parkinson's and dementia and takes ages to do anything. So it's almost like my childhood's gone in reverse, because she spent my childhood telling me what to do at certain times, and push, 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 push. And now all of a sudden she's this doddery little old lady and she's driving me mad because I want to get things done. So it's almost like it's gone full circle. So yeah, that awareness is amazing. It's a great chapter, and I love the call for core beliefs inventory. Thank you.
Yeah. Julie has her hand raised, and thank you, Shirley. That was really well explained. And I love your focus on time because my mom was very punctual and I'm not. So it was always a battle with us too.
Man, I've so identified with everything. And Bethany, thank you for your share. And isn't it interesting how your tears came up as though you actually experienced your sibling's death? And I think that that's the kind of trauma stuff. I mean, this is really helpful stuff, y'all, to realize how many generations of one bad thing happening that affects generation after generation after generation. And we wonder, why are we so afraid of death, or why do we have to be so perfect, or why are we so afraid of making a mistake when it doesn't make sense in this life? But it does, because of our parenting. You know, y'all already know that I felt unloved and not part of my family and all that. But one of my deepest wounds was, you know, my poor dad was doing the best he could, but he really fucked things up. I mean, over and over and over. And I think I have 3 sisters, or had, and all 3 of us were cute. And my parents didn't want us to get a big head. So we all believed we were ugly. I believed that my father paid people to pay me when I did a job because I knew I wasn't smart enough to do that job. And I mean, I truly believe that. I was in high school thinking that my dad is paying employers so that I won't know I'm retarded. And that was the word they used, and that was exactly what I thought I was. But the biggie that he did that really impacted my life as an adult, I never had a relationship with a man or a boy that was a good guy, because I felt so unworthy. And the reason I felt unworthy is Dad, in an effort to protect me, said, watch out for the boys. They'll tell you that they love you, but they don't. And the way that set in me was, you are not lovable. Don't ever believe somebody if they tell you that they love you. It's not true. You're not lovable. And that is one of my core beliefs. And when people get crosswise with me, I go immediately to that place of no wonder I screwed up again, because I'm not lovable. I need to isolate. I need to not subject myself to one human on this planet because I hurt people without meaning to, or without knowing what I've done. And there was so much insanity in my family. We were all in trouble for something all of the time. And the truth is, we rarely knew what we were in trouble for, but we believed that we had done something to deserve it. Therefore, I know that to this day, I believe that I'm unlovable. And I know people love me. I know up here that people love me, but I've never accepted it in my heart ever, because it would hurt too bad to be left again. I've been left too much. And, you know, y'all hear me say this every week. I'm so grateful that we're doing this work, because I grew up with a broken heart. And I'm so incredibly grateful that I have you ladies to do this healing with me. I know y'all love me. I know y'all know I love you. But knowing it intellectually and knowing it in my gut is not the same thing. And I mean, I identified with every single thing each of you has said, because I don't think there's anything that hasn't happened to me. And that's, I don't know, y'all. I am so grateful that all of this stuff around trauma is coming to the forefront of psychology, because the tools are now in my toolbox that were not there prior to, you know, starting this work with y'all. I didn't have any trauma tools, and I had no idea the impact that trauma had on me. But when I think about my dad telling me, they'll tell you that they love you, but they don't. I think that was when I decided I wanted to be dead, because I'm nothing but a pain in the ass and I shouldn't be here. And I'm glad we're doing this, because it brings that stuff to the forefront. And for right now, that's all I have to say. I might share more later, but we got a big group and I love y'all. Thank you.
Julie, that's beautiful. And man, I feel and hear your pain growing up like that, hearing those messages. Whether your dad meant to, certainly not, but that's how you received it. And that's brutal. I hear you. Yeah, you are lovable. Petra, I know you had a hand up earlier.
Yes, I just wanted to say something, because I resonated a lot with what Gary said, and the same as what Julie just shared. I think that seemed to be kind of educational patterns which were used in these days. I don't know, but I can remember as well that I was often in trouble when I didn't know why. So my mother had the idea that if I find out for myself, that it would be a better learning experience. But I think she mostly overestimated was what I was able to do at my age. So she probably thought that I was just more capable as a child and to do this way of reasoning that she was able to do as an adult. And this was something that robbed me of my security, because I was never sure if I've done something the way she wanted me to do it. I only knew when I was in trouble or not. And if I got into trouble, it was on my side to find out why, and that was pretty difficult. And then she had this icing pattern, so she didn't talk to me for hours or days, and this was even more troubling for me, because I remember that I asked myself, what happens if she doesn't talk to me again? What would I do then? And yeah. And the interesting thing is about those beliefs, because they are more or less like habits. So these are so devastating, because they are so grounded so deeply and repeated so often. And I don't think that we are really aware of this repeating we are doing. Interestingly enough, some 20 years ago, I saw myself that I did something that I did to my partner at that time, like that I behaved like my mother did. And this really scared me a little bit because I never intended to do it that way. But I wasn't aware at that time. I just thought that I was just doing the same as I watched her doing. But the other thing is, with this work, I know this is much more deeply ingrained in us because it's, as Nicole explained it in the RAS, which is our our measurement for something that scares us. So for anxiety. And the interesting thing is, I'm not quite sure how many of you are into artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, these large language models we have, are so similar to our brain. And that's, I think, so interesting because they are only working with, I'm just looking for the word, sorry, with probabilities. So they are knowing the words and they are calculating the probability of the next word. And that's why they are making up those sentences. And our brain is kind of working the same. So the brain is for saving energy as well. And so we do a lot of stuff without thinking. And the brain just takes the probability of what we are in the way of doing, what we would do next. And if this is kind of a habit, then the brain doesn't have to calculate so much. So because it already knows, because we've done it so often. And that's the interesting thing. It's as well a calculation of probability. And so we know if we have done something 1,000 times, then we have to do something different 1,000 times to get this erased, because this is the way the brain works. That's really an interesting thing. And I wanted to talk to something else, but I've forgotten. So if it comes back to me, I will tell it at the end. So thank you.
What I really heard, Petra, is just that terror that if your mother withdrew and never spoke with you again, your inner child, that must have really been painful.
Yeah.
And that you just wanted to do the right thing. And sometimes you didn't know what that was, but you kept efforting and trying and to get her approval face. So I just really resonate with that as well. And I love the idea of we have to practice now 1,000 times, because she said in the podcast, you know, it's a 5 to 15 year childhood. So we have 5 to 15 years to now unravel all those painful beliefs and stories and not enoughness and unworthiness, so that we can live into our whole being.
Yes, that's why understanding it on a cognitive level is just not enough.
Yeah, it's in our body.
Because I was of the opinion, when I just understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, then I will be able to change it. That must be easy then, because you know that this wouldn't lead you anywhere and you can do differently. But took me some time to understand that's not that easy.
I wish also.
Yeah.
Joe or Juliet, you ready to share?
Yeah, I can go. Yep. It was yeah, thinking about my core beliefs, that was kind of the most significant thing for me in this chapter and brought up quite a lot. And I think I really resonated with her, the first story that she says about, in her words, I am not considered. And yeah, I really, really resonated with that. I think in my family, it felt to me like I was not considered and my needs were not important and other people's needs were more important than mine. And that, you know, whether that was like a kind of a, you know, a gender-based thing, because I've got two brothers, so I was the only girl in my family. So I think, you know, stereotypically I was meant to be the sort of the caring whatever one. And yeah, I think one of the first times, you know, looking back on it now as an adult, I kind of realized that was my dad had an affair, and when I was about 11 or 12, and it was quite hit and miss as to whether they were going to sort of stay together or not, but they did anyway. And after that, my mum put my brother into my room, and it was like I had to look after my brother because they needed to spend time together. So that was like one thing. But also, I was quite, you know, sensitive sort of as a kid to other people, and this is a family pattern in my dad's family. His dad was always criticizing his mum. This is so my dad's parents, so like she could never do anything well enough, you know, and all of that. So that pattern continued with my dad, and I used to, you know, I was old enough to kind of understand the pattern, and I used to try and protect my mum, sort of try and stick up for my mum, and, you know, say something to kind of, and it ended up causing a lot of problems between it. It kind of brought a certain sense of closeness between me and my mum, at what I thought was closeness, but actually now in hindsight, I realise it was more like a common enemy intimacy. And I got to a point at that age where I realised if I continued defending that I would not have a relationship with my dad, that I would lose any kind of closeness I had with my dad. So I had to make that decision at that time to step away from that role of protecting my mum. Otherwise, I was just not gonna, you know, I was not gonna have any kind of closeness. So I made that decision, and I felt like I lost the closeness with my mum because I wasn't protecting her anymore. And I didn't have the closeness with my dad either. So it was I've just, you know, that's one of my core kind of definite core beliefs is that I'm not worthy of love and belonging. And you know, that's kind of the young part of me. You know, was lots of other instances throughout my life, but just, you know, that pattern of kind of, especially my dad, because my dad was always busy, so if I ever wanted to talk to him, my mum would just say, you know, he's busy, now's not a good time. But it was never a good time. And I would get to a point where I was just kind of like, just, you know, it was, I think she says like, well, there's the three needs, isn't there? It's to be seen, to be heard, and to express yourself, to be able to express yourself. Yeah, it was when I tried to express myself, you know, in a calm way, they weren't available for me. So I'd get to a point where I would get so frustrated that I'd probably, you know, I would push my needs down because they weren't important. So because my family didn't want to know, you know, what my need, like what was going on for me or anything, I just created that belief that I wasn't worthy. And then I create the belief that I can't trust people. And then I'd feel bad for feeling that. So yeah, so it's just I've tried to work on it for a long time and accept that, you know, it's, you know, I just don't think that I think they try their best in their own way, but they're very self kind of oriented, my parents, and that's just how they are. My dad's less so, my mum's more so, more she's in her own little world, and it's very difficult to get in there. And to be honest, I've kind of given up on that, for my own self care. But yeah, I feel like it's good to, you know, it's good to have these things highlighted, and it's good to kind of just have the tools, as Julie said, to try and work on giving ourselves those positive kind of messages that, you know, we might not have got from other sources in our life. So yeah, that's it.
I hear you, Joe. That there was a lot of pain, and it sounds like some loneliness and some feelings of your brother's needs mattered more than yours. Your mom and dad didn't have anything to give. They couldn't see you and hear you and accept you and let you express. And that was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tip of the iceberg, you know, but it's yeah, I think we all share similar things in our lives and can resonate with each other on that level. Yeah.
And why it's such breakthrough information to have this system to be able to reparent because our parents couldn't, to be able to see ourselves, reframe a message, know we're born worthy, it's our birthright, We're born lovable. We can't be otherwise. And to try and live into that every day. Thanks for sharing. Juliet, are you ready to go? And does anyone have to leave? I didn't even ask that question. No one's spoken up, so Juliet, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Powerful shares so far from different folks, and excuse me, it's allergy season. Anyway, yeah, powerful things people share so far. Growing up, about a year ago, I was having foot problems, and I had an MRI done of my ankle, and it hadn't been done for a really long time. And the doctor's notes, he goes, "You ruptured a ligament in your ankle. Like it looks like it's kind of old. Do you know ever what happened?" And I did rupture it when I was like a teenager. I fell down the stairs. And you know how you've got your MCL and the ACL in the knee? You have a similar structure in your ankle. And so it's ligament that goes across the top. And my mom doesn't remember that. I ruptured a freaking ligament in my foot, and my mom does not remember that. Like, I remember it. It hurt. Like, I threw up. It hurt so bad when I did it. And it took months to heal. I couldn't ice skate or snow ski after that because I never had the ankle strength. Of course I didn't. I ruptured the ligament. It was never repaired. So that's what my upbringing was like in a little nutshell. So, you know, I kind of relate to that, not having needs met, not even today with my mom. It's a relationship I try to navigate where I want to stay engaged in the relationship to a certain degree, but it causes sometimes me a lot of distress as I, you know, try to not react to the things that she says or does. Her family, someone just used the word, I was thinking about it, trauma bonding, I think. That's how they connect with each other. If I called my cousin up and said, "Hey, how's it going?" She'd be like, "Oh, it's great. Did you hear what Aunt so-and-so did?" And it's anyway, it's just very symbolic. And I think I can only have a relationship with my mom today because of understanding ways to take care of myself. I love the term, I reject your narrative. I reject sometimes for what she thinks. And it took a long time to be able to amend. So I don't say that verbally usually to her, but it's inside my head, where I'll be like, no, I don't, that's not how I feel, or that's not how I see it. And to be able, as others have talked about, to appreciate what she came from, what her growing up was like. She didn't have it to give. She still doesn't. But you're not allowed to be upset around her. She's kind of one of those people where, you know, you can't be upset. She wants to fix it. So yeah, so it's just, it sort of sometimes feels like it's been adulthood has been a journey of deprogramming, you know, reevaluating. And I got to do some of that through the lens of the 12-step program. I was going to AA and CA for like 20 years because I turned to drugs in my early days, coming out of high school and what have you. Of course, I didn't want to feel. And feeling is still hard, isn't it? That's why work like this is important. And I stay on this journey of what is that core belief? What is the thing that's underneath my initial reaction? Because usually my initial reaction isn't, it's a little more explosive, and there's usually a little bit more going on at the deep level. And I think I was talking last week, I've been working really on physically taking care of myself. I was really sick last year. So last year was just really complicated. And I've been in sort of this different mode lately. It's been really good because I feel strong. Like I don't always physically feel strong, but I feel physically strong. And I was up at my sister's last week and we got to talking about my son. And I talked to her for a little bit. And then later I talked to my stepbrother. And the next morning I was craving sugar so bad. And I did my journaling, and it took me a little bit to realize, like, oh, these were hard feelings that came up last night. And it's not that the conversations were bad. It was nice to kind of talk to them a little bit about things. But it was just this new awareness about when I go for what I want, that really sweet carb, what is it that I'm looking for, and ultimately I did kind of cave in a little bit, and it was not something I decided to shame myself about. It was like, okay, yeah, that was really hard. It was really hard. My brother-in-law and I just got into how worried we are. My son's in a relationship and is married to somebody, and he's isolated from his whole family, including his mom. Like, that's a very concerning place. If it was one of my girlfriends, I would react differently, right? You'd say to your girlfriend, hey, wait, your relationship isn't supposed to separate you from the people that you love, right? So anyway, so it was just a neat observational point. And I think that's what I'm really gleaning a lot from this book, as she talks about different things, is it's just being able to kind of notice if I just want to lay in bed all day, or whatever it is that I want to eat. What am I feeling, and what do I need instead? If my choice isn't to do the sugar or to lay in bed, then what is my alternate choice? And in order to make that choice, I find I have to recognize whatever I'm feeling. And, the last 5 years, the one thing that I don't necessarily talk about, I don't think we always have to talk about the why, but it's so much loss. I've had so much loss in the last 4 or 5 years. It's really hard, and it gets hard, I think, sometimes being in a place where it's hard to find like-minded people. Let's simplify it a little bit that way. It's hard to kind of find sometimes like-minded people, and being retired disabled, I don't have the same connections that somebody might do at work. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's been really interesting. It's been really interesting, and sometimes it's hard. It is. It's really painful. I'm sort of navigating a different level of energy, and I hope that this weekend I'm going to try the breathing technique. So I am a huge soccer fan, and I go to our local club games. I mean, like, I'm kind of nutty about it. Like, I'm super. It's yeah, you too. Okay, so like I get like super duper hyper, and it can take me like 4 hours to calm down. And after the game on Sunday, I was able to walk, and I walked like almost 18 blocks. Now it was downhill, not a steep hill, but it was downhill, so it was a little easier. And then when I got home, I'm like, oh yeah, that was great, because that walk enabled me to sort of, I had been really overstimulated and I had fun, right? So I had to calm down. But I can't always do that. So I'm going to challenge myself a little bit. There's another game this weekend to try the breathing exercises, because I can't sleep when I get like that. And so, talking about the vagus nerve and the different kinds of ways and things that get stimulated. So that's going to be my challenge, is to see how I suspect it's going to help me kind of calm down so I can sleep after the game. So it's fun stuff. Yeah. All right. Thanks you all for being here. So grateful for the group, and I'll cut it at that.
I resonated with so many of the things you shared. And I love the word you chose about reprogramming, because I often feel like it's that as well. And I just heard a lot of the pain of the relationship with your mom and how she would just try to fix you and talk you out of your feelings and even talk you out of a ruptured ankle injury and just minimize it instead of,
Pretty traumatic. I mean,
yes, instead of validating your pain and listening and being that safe space that we all wished we'd had. So I just really heard, and yes, totally into mostly Premier League soccer, but I played soccer my whole life, so totally get that. So Fonda, are you ready to share?
I just like to listen to everyone. It's so nice. But when I did go through and listen to the chapter and listen to the her podcast, some things came up for me. And one of the things, I did have a boss. I was very young at the time, and getting a divorce. I had 2 kids. I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s, and my boss would always say, you will gather the evidence to support your most dominant thought. And that was such an aha moment for me, because I had not been exposed to, I started to get exposed to Wayne Dyer, and you know, my youth and my growing up was just a lot of doing and surviving and not a lot of talking about feelings. And so that was one thing that came up when I was thinking about that. And in the lesson, in the FSJ that I was doing this week, today I am practicing being aware to the belief patterns that I have, and understanding, you know, that isn't just the way it is. That is a belief pattern, and that is subject to change. And doing all this work has let me know that I have the permission to challenge that belief pattern, and that it doesn't have to just, that's the way it is. You know, when you grow up in that, that's the way it is. And then the thing about I am grateful for, you know, the thirst for that knowledge and that discernment and choosing the path that is true for me. Now, what I grew up with, and, you know, there were things that I just believed without even questioning, you know, my whole life. And then to understand that that was just someone else's belief put on me. And so, you know, that's a real awakening, and to trust my instincts and my ability to take steps for my own self-care. And this week has been freeing and joyful, because I can look at my belief system and I can say, do I believe that? You know, and I can choose to not believe that. And today I am hopeful and aware that I can start from where I am, and I no longer have to be the victim of the trauma and the patterns of those beliefs, and they don't align with where I am today. And doing this work is what has made me feel that, you know, I have a whole new thing opening up for me, that I actually, you know, my mother grew up and she was very religious. She was Seventh-day Adventist, and you know, I understand completely where she was coming from. Her whole life story led her mother to do the things she did, and there was a lot of fear, and there was a lot of loss in their family, and there was a lot of you know, there was a lot back then. They grew up in a lot of fear and a lot of not having enough, and famines and serious diseases, and so I see why they were so afraid, and their belief system was so strict, because this is the way you believe because there's safety in that, you know, to them. So I understand it, but just to get the permission that I'm not growing up in those times, and I can come from a different place, and then changes in the area that allow me to feel happy, content, energized, and feel endless possibilities, because I'm not locked in any longer to that. And to me, doing the work, it feels like freedom, like chains have just been kind of unleashed. And today I'm practicing that I identify a limiting belief and question it and replace it with a more positive, energized belief. And another thing came up for me. She talked about affirmations, and immediately that little girl on the help, you know, the Viola Davis, when she sat her on her lap after she had just gotten really yelled at by her mom, and the little girl was just torn apart by it. And she said, "You is smart, you is kind, and you is important." And you know, affirmations have gotten kind of a bad rap, Stuart Smalley and all of that. But I understand that the affirmations we can give each other, just like that little girl received, that even though she received trauma from her mother and trauma about who she was, she had someone in her life. How fortunate to say there was another way, you know. And a lot of times the people around us, supposedly it was our support system, didn't say those things to us. And we went through life thinking we weren't important and we weren't smart. But to have someone at that age take that little crying girl and put her up on her lap and have her use those affirmations. And what this chapter said to me is that I can be that person to me, and this group can be that person to me. And we can all know that the system that we went through, and it was very limiting for me, and that I can just kind of throw those shackles off and start to let me be the me I want to be, and to be curious. And it's okay to be curious and vulnerable and all of these things. So once again, it was, you know, there are so many things, and, you know, you work through them. Like Beth, she went through the hard time of processing all of that. And it takes a while to know you're going to sit in the messy middle a little while. But, you know, you can come out of this because there's wonderful support and wonderful knowledge now, with, you know, the nerve system and how to manage it, and a undeveloped nerve system. So, okay, this is what it feels like. I think this is what it is. Now I'm given the tools to figure out how to breathe, you know, to go out in nature, to go wherever I need to go that is going to help me process through all of that and into a better place. Today, a few things happened down at work, and, you know, it just kind of bounced off me. I didn't take it personal. I didn't grab the bait. And it was because of the work, you know, that I had done here, and it felt real good. And we'll see how the sustainability is. I might have to read it again and again and again to remember it, but your smiling
1,000 times.
faces, yeah, your smiling faces just help me to know that we're here for that reason, to get to that place.
Yeah. Vonda, that was a beautiful share. And I just want to mirror back to you that you started saying, I'm just going to listen today, except the one thing. And so I just want to say your voice here matters, and you're glowing, and you are learning, and you are empowering yourself. And it's beautiful to see. And some of the things I heard were just the multi-generational trauma that you have seen influence your life. And that they were in survival in your grandparents' era, and just how that gets passed down, and how you're just really enlivened, and this permission, you get permission to challenge beliefs. You get permission to choose today and take off those shackles, and don't take things personally, and set boundaries, and all these tools you have now. Breathe, be in nature. So yeah, beautiful to see, and I so resonate. Jen has her hand raised.
I wasn't going to talk, but here I am. Yeah, with what everybody had to say. I have a few things to say as well. I have so many negative thoughts, patterns beliefs I need to work on. From like what she said, I don't feel like I'm considered. I don't feel like what I have to say is important. And I know what I have to say is important, but it's so hard because that's that battle inside me. But what I also realized, I've been homesick for the last few days, and I have this belief in my head that people don't believe that I'm sick. And I'm noticing these patterns, but it's so hard to change them. I am sick. Fuck you if you think that. But do they even think that? I don't even know. It's just that's where I go. That's that negative, not being smart. I always struggled being dyslexic. I've struggled most of my life. But what's interesting is thinking about that is I struggled really bad in elementary and in high school. It was always, oh, you have a learning disability. You have a learning disability. When I got to college, I almost had a 4.0. So I've had that thought in my mind most of my life that I'm not smart. But yet, when I really embrace topics or areas that I enjoy, then I excel in them. And so trying to get those patterns to stop being so present and so loud, I think is what working on will help me to. It's like kind of like a split personality, right? It's like, no, stop thinking that. That's not accurate. That is your mind fucking with you, basically. When I was young, I felt like if I wasn't perfect, then I wasn't loved. And that stemmed from my mom. If I wasn't like them or believed in what they believed, then I wasn't loved or I wasn't worthy. So when we should all be able to have our own beliefs and still be loved, right? Do things different and still be loved. Something so silly and so stupid, but still to this day, it drives me crazy, is my mom used to fold clothes or towels a certain way to put in the closet. That's how they fit right? But in my mind, that was the stupidest way to fold the towels because it took too long. So to this day, I still will not fold some towels the way she folded them, just because I will make it work a different way, the way I want to do it. But that perfection piece has just played havoc in my entire life. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm all over the place, but thank you for listening.
I so get that power struggle with one of your parent figures about the right way to do something, and that there is a right way and there's only one right way and it's their way. and that doesn't allow you to be seen and you to be heard and express. So I totally
Yeah, and that's how I
get that.
felt most of my life, is not seen, not heard, not acknowledged, you
Yeah.
know. And then I would hide too as well if I felt like I was going to be judged or felt in any of those ways. And I would just go hide, whether it would be in my room or up the tree. So yeah.
Anything to avoid disapproval face, right? That's just
Exactly.
terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
I have to
I'm
go. I
different.
just want to say goodbye to everybody. And
Oh shoot, Margaret, I wish you'd said sooner because we want to
I
hear from
just
you.
realized how late it got here. I'm sorry, it's that hour time change. I will see everybody next week for inner child stuff.
And your Zoom link. Your lead.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will stick the Zoom link in. Don't worry.
Right. Well, feel
do you have
free in the WhatsApp to put any video or, I mean, a chat or anything you wanted to bring up today.
And next
we
week
didn't
we
get
go
to.
back to 2:30 our time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be back at normal, like 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific, and then y'all will be on time in London.
Yeah.
We'll be back to 6 hours. Well, I'll be back to 6 hours difference. So, but yeah, I'll put the link in.
Okay. Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you all for sharing. I enjoyed hearing. Sorry I didn't get a chance to participate.
Next time.
Thanks.
And Natasha.
Hi everyone. We're halfway through the book, and yeah, it's raising a lot of emotions for me, and I'm getting triggered quite a lot. So what's good is that there are some practices, and I'm doing some of the practice. What's good is I'm noticing and tuning into my emotions. So, but it's not stopping the triggering, which obviously we're learning. It's because it's already hard there, which is so hard, isn't it? You know, when we're trying. But it's also helping after the event for me to, when I'm rationalizing, thinking what happened there, I'm seeing the connection, a variety of new connections that I maybe just haven't thought about. A lot of it's to do with my childhood. So, and reading this chapter has reminded me about how the brain's growing as a baby, you know, when you come into the world. And on page 115, she said at the age of 2, your brain function is developing in a certain way on the slowest brainwave cycle, the delta state. So I've got to look into that a bit more. But anyway, there's a certain development that's happening at the age of 2, and then from 2 to 4, there's the theta state. So there's another form of development. And reflecting back, I realized, which I've shared before, is obviously when I was I had a young teenage mum, and then by the age of 2, my dad left my mum. She was pregnant, and so she was young. And I never really thought about this. And as you know, I say this sometimes I'm still thinking, why have I never put these pieces of the puzzle together? That, like, obviously my mum was young and she was dealing with all of that stuff. So, but the effect on me, because I think it says up until the age of 7 on page 110, we're forming our core beliefs about who we are. And I just, obviously all that trauma going on around me. And I must admit, a lot of the time, I think that might be why I sort of don't really know who I am. Do you know what I mean? I sort of, probably because there's a lot going on. I wouldn't have necessarily had the parenting, and just imagine, I can't imagine going through what my mum went through. You try to, but a young person going through all of that and becoming a single parent, and her parents, my grandparents who are alive now, they were very what we call Victorian. So they were shocked that she got pregnant out of marriage, so she did get married while she was pregnant. And then they moved away. That was when my mum. So then my mum met my stepfather when I was 6, I think, or 7. Anyway, they got married, I say. And then they moved away to allow the family to form. So they just left her. So can you imagine, like, no help at all. So I think that whole period when I was, you know, according to this, all that development was happening. Yeah, it's obviously had an impact. So like this week has been a very emotional week for me. There's been a lot of things going on, but I've really been triggered with abandonment issues. It sounds really silly, but the neighbour, I'm on the committee because I live in an apartment block now, and I'm on the committee, and they were arranging to meet during lunch at 11 o'clock, I think it was, to have a meeting at the cafes nearby. And they said 11 o'clock. I was there on time, but they weren't there. And one of the wives was there. So I was chatting to them, and then she says, oh, the guy, because there's 3 guys that were going to the 3 guys are there. They're a lot older than me because it's more, I didn't realise when we moved in, but it's a lot older age group. They're very retired. Anyway, they weren't there. And the wife said, oh, no, they've gone. And I went, triggered, abandoned. Well, why have they gone? I'm here on time. And I was in front of this one going, well, why are they here? And then she goes, oh, they're just across the road. Da, da, da. And then I saw them. So then I shouted. I said, hey, I completely, I lost my composure. And I'm thinking, this is so rude. And I said to this wife, that is just so rude to just leave me. And I just, it's so embarrassing to react like that because and anyway, what they were thinking is they'll go and get a table at the cafe and then they'll text me which cafe, but why did they leave early? Do you know what I mean? It just sent me into a completely unnecessary state of emotion, but I was able after the event to think that's abandonment. They left, they didn't tell me where they were going, but what happened to me as a kid?
I didn't feel considered.
Yeah. I mean, why I really oh, panic, ridiculous. I really felt they didn't want me to. And then when I saw them, I said, right, well, I won't be on the committee then. If I don't matter, I literally just. So anyway,
that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense.
I think because I am a bit tell it like it is. So there you are. That just gives you an example. There's other things going on in my life as well. My daughter, who's got the chronic fatigue, they've had to move because they're in a rental. And so I've been helping with that. And I've had to, put it this way, I was in tears in the car. Yeah, I'm not much of a crier, but I was really in tears in the car on Saturday because I was helping with the move. But there's a lot going on in my life. So it's good to be doing this work. But I don't know whether this is triggering, maybe it is, but I'm aware of the triggers.
It's an amazing step, and I think you're just where you need to be. Having emotions come if you've kind of kept them down, and it's not easy, it's uncomfortable, and it's not familiar.
But it's so frustrating when I know all this stuff and I get it, and then you just do that, and it's like, I felt
is it that you felt at the whim, like a little out of control?
Yeah. Why did I react like that? It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah. So
my emotions are a bit raw at the moment. This is definitely having an impact, but
yeah. Well, big hug for you, because I know for me, I have such expectations of myself that anytime I do something a little over the top, it feels like I'm bad. How could I do that? And I'm like, actually, I get to do that too. I get to make mistakes. I get to make a mess. I get to react. I get to do it all.
But just put it in perspective, so you don't think I'm like that. Well, I'm not like that all the time. It's like, I'm shocked that there's been a few instances where I've really been triggered, and it's by things I wouldn't normally have been triggered by. So
Yeah.
I'm not running around like that all the, otherwise there wouldn't be a shop, would it?
Yeah. Well, you're completely normal, and it seems like it makes sense to me from my perspective, but I'm sure it's not comfortable. Yeah. Well, this was a rich sharing, and the one thing I just feel compelled to say is one of the things that has helped me work is do the opposite of what I like hate when other people do. Because usually those are exiled parts. Those are the beliefs that we've been disapproved of, and so we shut them down. And Jen, when you said, you know, if they thought you were blowing off, not being truthful about being sick, because that would be flaky, right? And for me, being flaky would be like mortal sin, like, or ridiculous or silly or make mistakes or all these things I've compartmentalized. And so I'm actually practicing and playing with trying to do those so that I'm not so rigid and so either or. So anyway, that just is one thing, Natasha, that came to me. Like, for me, my work would be, yeah, I get to get triggered and lose it because I'm usually so not. And I have this shame around anyone who would do that. I'm like, no, that's a learned belief. I don't want that belief. That doesn't serve me. So I just wanted to throw that in the mix. Have a great week. We go on to chapter 7 and inner child. And thank you all for being here and sharing so openly.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Nice seeing everybody.
Thank you.
Nice to see everybody too.
Bye.
Feel better, Jen.
Thanks,
Thanks for today, Alison.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Good to see you, Shirley.
Take care.
Bye, Joe. Bye, Petra. Bye, Jerry.